So welcome to World Affairs Fridays. This is our 3 times a month event where we invite people who have expertise to join us for the Peoria Area World Affairs Council and Bradley University to talk about something that will stimulate our global minds. Laurie Bergner today is our guest. She is a well-traveled and expert photographer. She has visited Ethiopia twice and will be speaking to us about the Hamar tribe of Ethiopia today. I can mention that Laurie is a retired psychologist.
No, not retired, actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Old maybe, but not retired.
We're all old. In that case, she is a professional, and so we thank her for taking the time this morning to share her passions with us, if not necessarily listening to all of our problems professionally. So with that, Laurie, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, so let's see. As Angela said, I love to travel, and I am really drawn to exotic places. I just think they're fascinating. And I actually got to Ethiopia the first time in 2013. And I had been to a lot of places around the world, and especially all over Asia and India and Europe. I love as well, by the way, and some a little bit South America, Central America, whatever. I love Mexico actually, but I always had wanted to go to sub-Saharan Africa. But I didn't know where to go. And I probably would love a safari, but I'm really more interested in people and cultures and things. So I just didn't know. Most Americans go on safari when they go to Africa, but I wanted, as I say, culture and history and stuff. So it was actually a chance remark. I didn't know where to go. It was on kind of my list, but just didn't know. It was actually a chance remark that got me there. Somebody just happened to say something like, "Oh, Ethiopia, that's a fascinating country." I said, "Ethiopia? What's that?" So I go home and I Google it. And the pictures that came up and the description was just really drew me in. So the north is Ethiopian Orthodox, which is pretty fascinating in itself. I mean, who had ever heard of it? But of course, it's like Russian or Greek. It's high religion. But the South, and I went there as well, and it's fascinating. But the South has the tribes, and they are just out of National Geographic, and they're very unusual in Africa because a lot of tribes now, to see them in their native dress, etc., and in their little villages, you got to go to rural areas, and it's hard to get to. But in Ethiopia, it's right there. A bunch of tribes, a whole lot of different tribes and different languages, all in little villages all over. The roads are bad. It's some travel and it's very hot, but it's right there to see. And they've gotten more and more tourism in the last so many years, so they improved the roads a little, and the tribes have gotten smarter about charging for photography. So that's okay with me. If I have to pay a couple of bucks for not per picture, but even for a bunch of pictures in a village, I think I can do that. I actually liked the whole place so much that I went back again in 2018. So some of my photographs are from 2013 and some from 2018. The difference in 2018 was I decided I really wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into the tribes, and I stayed overnight a couple of times in the villages, which you can do if you're with the right people. And then that was really well, I will tell you about them. So I'm going to start with the Hamar tribe. And if we have time, I have some pictures of other tribes too. I don't know that I'm an expert photographer. I really started studying photography, especially after the first trip. And I love it. And so I'd say I'm a good intermediate photographer. I'm not professional or anything. And some of the pictures are better than others from a photographic point of view, but I included some that aren't as good photographically because they tell a story. And I have a couple of videos for you too that I took with my iPhone. So let me start here. And okay, let's see. And if you want to get rid of the people of us on the right side, you can click at the top there and get rid of the people so it doesn't go over the photographs. So, okay, everybody seeing this fine? Okay, so the Hamar tribe, they live among the bush in the covered hills of the Omo Valley, which is in the south of Ethiopia. Oops. And here's where Ethiopia is, in case anybody didn't know, which I really didn't. Most of us don't know very much about Ethiopia, about Africa, actually, right? There's so many countries, et cetera. So this is in the very eastern part of Africa. And the east and west of Africa are very different. They're people, we lump them all, we tend to, if you don't know that much, we just tend to lump them all into one big country, I guess, and they're really very different, very different. It's all tribal, and they have different histories and different cultures, etc. So here's a picture in a market. There are probably about 15 to 20,000 members of the Hamar tribe. They make their living as successful cattle breeders and farmers. They're very, very recognizable because of their hair, the women's hair, and their clothing. So the women wear these, they decorate their hair. Hair is very, very important to men and women in the Hamar tribe. They decorate their hair with a mix of ochre water and fat, and then they twist it into these curls, these locks and strands to create tresses, and the women do it for each other. The men also actually use hair and have buns in the back of their heads sometimes that will, if they have killed an animal or another person, and there's a lot of conflict among the tribes, which I'll talk about. So they also wear elaborately decorated goatskin colored clothing there, as you can see, that is decorated with beads and cowries. So this is just the way, this is not for tourists. This was a big market, but it's not for tourists. It's for them. This is just the way they dress. They're beautiful people, by the way. Ethiopians, both north and south, they're just beautiful, beautiful people. Now you notice the necklaces here. So this is an important part too. They have, this woman has a leather long tipped necklace on the top there, and then 2 copper necklaces. And the first one there shows that she is someone's first wife. And so second and third wives have copper necklaces without the other big one there. And they do, that means, have polygamy, right? If it depends on their wealth and how wealthy they are. So here's how the men are: lots of beads and things, and their necklaces. They have necklaces, and they also have earrings, and the earrings actually are indicative of the number of wives they have. And I don't know exactly which ones mean what for them, but there they are. They're very affectionate, actually. You see the men and with their arms around each other, and the women with their arms around each other. Here's another picture from a market. And you see also the bracelets that they wear. Now, this is not the Hamar tribe, but I wanted to show how primitive the agriculture is there. So this was actually as we were driving into the Omo Valley. So they belong to some tribe, but of course they're not dressed the same. And this was before we got into the deep south, but here they are. The women tend to do the heavy work. It's kind of shocking for us, I think, to see that. But there they are, and this is what you will always see. You don't see the men doing this. And here they are collecting water. Water is a big deal in Ethiopia. It's very scarce. It is not pure. And when you see these yellow containers that they're going there, and this is another thing that the women do all over Ethiopia, actually. They go and they get water. And here they are. They also bathe in the water here. So you can see that it's not very healthy. And sometimes they have to walk long distances to do that. So this is when I went to spend overnight. And this was one of the big reasons I wanted to come back, was to spend overnight in the villages. So they took me in the afternoon to this little village, and there's a whole lot of them dotting the place, the area. Land is actually not owned by individuals, but it's free for cultivation and grazing, and they move on when the land gets exhausted. And inside of these huts, it's just a room. Well, you'll see the inside, I guess, really, just a room. So in the afternoon, the men go off and they graze the goats and the cattle, and that is their wealth. So cattle form an axis around which their world revolves. And an example is they have 27 different words to describe the color of a cow in their local language. So the division of labor is with age and with sex. So girls and women grow the crops, they collect the water, they cook, they look after children, and the children start herding cattle or goats, especially, as well, from a very early age, like 8 years old. They can go help with that. The young men work the crops some, they defend the herds, and they go off raiding livestock from other tribes. The adult men herd the cattle, they plow with the oxen, they raise beehives. So cattle is such a big deal of their wealth, and it's also how they get a wife, because they have a marriage dowry that is with goats, and 30 goats and 20 heads of cattle is what you need for a wife. So that's called bride wealth. So when they don't have them, they raid other places. That's one of the things they do. Here's a little kid that's milking a goat. So this was the little place. It was a little compound, not tiny actually. And this was the hut that the family owned, and what my guide, and they have a local guide and a driver, and they brought these little tents for me. And so I get one tent all to myself, and they slept in the other one. I did not sleep in the hut with the family. The family sleeps in the hut. You can see the mother there on the right. So they were setting up the tent for me, and later we ate separately. They cooked a great meal for me while the family ate inside their hut. And then they came out and we just sat and talked. So this is the family. They don't look so friendly there. People, I don't know why they don't smile for the camera, but they had 3 little boys, and they actually were very friendly. They were really nice. There's the kids. So this is inside the hut. They invited me in before dinner, and they were making dinner and stuff to drink, and you can see how basic it is here. Here's a picture of how they're cooking, and I imagine it's not super healthy to be in there with the smoke and stuff, but she was offering me something to drink. A friend was in there talking. These are their bowls. And you can see the yellow water containers in the back there. It's a picture of the two of the kids. So this is a school, and they do have schools. And in a neighboring tribe, I went to talk to the school teachers, and they have very, very little education. The education in Ethiopia is absolutely awful. They basically it's totally memorizing things, and their tests will be fill in the blank, multiple choice, no real thinking kind of stuff at all. And interestingly, on the side of inside the school, I saw a list of the kids that were going to school. And for a while, it looked like every year there was an equal number of boys and girls. And then somewhere around 13, 14, 15, suddenly there was like one girl that was still in the class. And the next year, like no girls at 15. So they're getting married, I think, early. And the boys are not getting married until their 30s. So the girls just drop out. And the teachers have probably only a little bit more education than the kids do. So this was the mother, and outside, you can see where they were keeping the goats overnight. So when we were talking, she said she's the only wife, and she was saying that she wants him to take another wife because they have 3 boys and no daughters, and she wants help from a wife, and she also wants him to have more daughters, which of course, actually, scientifically, there's no more chance of him having a daughter with another wife than he has with her. But anyway, she was wanting some help with some more girls in the family. Let's see here. They say that the man is totally the boss of the family. And if a wife makes a mistake, they will beat her. And I think that is actually all over sub-Saharan Africa, that there's a lot of hitting of wives and children. It's just expected. It says here, it's part of their daily life until at least 2 children have been born. And under Hamar rules, the husband does not have to explain why he's delivering a beating. He can do it if he wants to, whenever. So first wives actually are more important and powerful. They have more property. Her sons get more property than the sons of other wives. She was saying she wants help with the crops and the children and everything. So she really wanted him to get married. He said that he wanted a daughter because in the Hamar society, when he dies, it's his son-in-laws who will take care of the funeral. So he needs son-in-laws, which was really interesting to me. And I guess if he doesn't have son-in-laws, then his sons have to do it, but that's what he wanted. So
that's up around northern Sudan.
Yeah, someone might want to mute yourself because we can hear some talking in the background. Here's in the morning. And here's the little boy who's probably 8 years old, 9 years old, taking the little goats out for grazing. And you can see his father in the background taking the bigger goats out, and they leave for the day. This was a neighboring tribe, the Karo tribe, and I showed partly for the gun. They do have guns and they use them. They're part of wealth actually, but also there are cattle raids that go on and tribes taking cattle from each other. And so they do use guns there's quite a bit of conflict actually. The federal government just stays out, hands off. They can kind of do what they want. Okay, so here is the big cattle leaping ceremony that's very famous. So when a Hamar boy wants to get married, young man wants to get married, he has to have this ceremony, and it is a big deal. It's actually several days of ceremony. And so I got to go to one each time, and they really charge. They have figured out how to make some money out of tourists being. They don't mind tourists being there at all, but they charge big for it, which is probably part of why they don't mind it at all. So this was the young man. You can see how his hair is done, and he's getting ready for this cattle ceremony. So in the afternoon, in brutal heat, actually, they all get together and have all kinds of celebrations. So the women are sitting around by themselves, as you can see. And I want you to notice one of the big things that I think Westerners are just really shocked by is that part of the thing is that women, the relatives of the young man who's getting initiated, want to get whipped. Their backs are whipped with a switch, and the men do that. And they say that they are showing their sympathy with the young man. They also say it kind of binds him to them because they have gone through this pain for him. So you will see they all have scars. They've all been through this before. So the women are dancing and blowing horns, and the men are doing face painting. So here's a grandmother with her little kid sitting around with the women and children. And you can, this is a picture of, you can just see how beautiful these people are. And here's to show you the back. I mean, this beautiful young woman. Yeah, there's still somebody talking in the background. You might want to mute yourself. You can hear me. So you can see this. It is kind of shocking. But they're big into it. So here are some of the men that are taking part. And when they're not married, their heads are shaved. And here's the face painting that's going on. And that's a big part of things, is they're painting each other's faces. It was really fascinating. And you can see the switches in his hand right here. This was actually, you can see this a little bit different looking. This was the next time I went in 2018. And there's almost always a cattle leaping ceremony every few days or whatever. So almost whenever you go there, you can see this probably. So this is seems like a little bit different design, but it's another Hamar tribe. And the beads. And the men that are doing this, they go from tribe to tribe. Once they've had their own initiation, they take part in other tribes' initiations. See the feathers on the right there. And in this one, the women were getting their face painted too, which it wasn't in the first one, but this one, the women were also getting their faces painted. And so here they are with their horns and they're dancing, and that's part of, it's just a scene for quite a while. So women and children, older women and children are sitting around. These women are participating. They're asking to get whipped. They're blowing their horns. The men are getting their face painted all at the same time in a small area. And here are some men standing around with their switches. They're waiting now for the rest of the ceremony. Here was a guy that, and this was kind of fun. He was pretending he was going to whip me. He was kidding around with me. So you can see on the left, the woman is coming up to the man. She's actually asking him to whip her. And then after he whips her, she actually kind of bows like, thank you. There's another one coming up asking. Okay, here's a short video. It's not too great, but it gives you a little sense here of the women coming up to get whipped.
Yeah.
So there you are. One after the other comes up when they get a guy that's going to do it. And you can see another woman here in the left with her back that's bloody, and on the right is some scarification. So then the guys that have recently been through their initiation are called mazas, and they come in here and they begin to bring, we went to another area a little ways up, big clearing that's specifically for this, and they bring in cows. I think these are castrated cows. And here come the mazas that are coming to help with getting the cows all ready for this initiation. The women are still around, still dancing and horn blowing. And they're all going, just moving around. This was my second trip. These guys were doing this. Here's a, let's see, I'll do this for a minute. And so now the men are trying to get some cows, and they're really only looking for 4. I've read that sometimes it's 10 or 15, but when I saw there were really only 4 of them. They're going to put them shoulder to shoulder. So here they are trying to pull these cattle together. And here's the man of the hour waiting for his turn to do this. And everyone is standing around watching. And he, by the way, is naked. And you can see he's got these strips of birch across his chest, which is to ward off spirits. Let's see if I missed anything. So he's naked. Nobody else is, but he is. And then he jumps, makes a flying leap onto the shoulders of the cow. And the whole, this is the center of the entire initiation is having to walk over the shoulders of 4 of these without falling. He gets off and he goes back the other way and back and forth 4 times. And that is the whole initiation. That is the core. That's what it's about. So I'll show you, this is, here he is doing it, so you can see. That was it. So the next day we went to his village and they're having a big celebration in his village. So this is the entering the village. And here's everyone getting ready for a big feast. They are stripping goats. The women and children are sitting around. There's a mother with her little kid. And here's some of the older men that are not doing much. The younger men are doing the preparations and stuff. And here they are skinning a goat for the feast. And in a lot of countries, we don't really do this here, obviously, but in a lot of countries, my daughter was in Peru and they have goat for their festivals and holidays as well. And they're putting it on a stick to cook it. And the women are cooking over here and then the younger men come outside and they have, and I guess the Maasai next door, this is actually very close to Kenya. The Maasai have the same dances where they're jumping. They called it a competition and I never did find out, is it a competition for how high they could jump, or I don't really know. But they were out here for quite a while. And again, you see the gun. And here's our young man also participating. Here's I'll do a little of this. So in their religion, there's one man that's responsible by heredity for the welfare of the community, and they believe that he communicates with the gods. So they have one major god and some other smaller ones. They call for rain, they bless the cattle and the goats so there's no disease, and they solve big problems for the community. Here's the women here that were watching the dancing. And then as you saw that they ended up participating in the dancing as well after a while. This was the second time I went in a different area, still the Hamar tribe though, and the men are standing around. But the same, dancing and jumping, same. So I thought I would show you some other tribes. Let's see if I missed anything. Because two other tribes are a little different. There's a lot that is also the same actually. So, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing what some other tribes look like and some of the differences. So this one is very famous because this is the lip plate people that you may have seen. It's called the Mursi Tribe or Mursas. And this was one of their villages. There's a woman doing something with the grain, an old woman. You can see they all paint their faces. And this one has the most, I guess, to us, we would call them bizarre decorations besides the lip plates. So there's the men that paint their faces and have feathers and decorations. Here's this, I don't know what she has on her head on the right there. Now, the lip plates, I guess I should have started to show you one, but they can take them out. They do take them out. So the lip plates are one of the things they're most known for They're actually inserted when a girl is 15 or 16, and it's considered beautiful, and it's part of, it increases her bride wealth. So they're usually made of clay, and it's inserted by getting her lip cut and then having a small clay plate inserted into her lip. And then over the years, they stretch it and they stretch it and they stretch it. And they take it out when they sleep, when they eat, when they feel like having it out. It's actually kind of heavy, I guess, after a bit. So the larger the lip plate, the more that she is worth when she gets married. And so at this point, it's a tradition for enhancing beauty and marriage prospects. It says here, the current bride price for a woman now is 38 cattle and a Kalashnikov AK-47 machine gun. But when they take it out to eat or sleep, you can see what happens, what has gone on. They also, by the way, have to take out the lower teeth in order to make this work. And there they are. It's just kind of incredible. They also put them in their ears, and you can see better. The person on the right here has a plate kind of in the ear. They stretch the earlobes. Here's the men. And I call these little warriors, these little guys. And look at this one I put in, I mean, her lip, of course, has the lip plate out at this point, but look at the scarification that's for beauty as well. Interestingly, the Mursa are known to be very aggressive and very combative. And they were very aggressive about money, for instance, for the pictures. If you give them the going rate, which I don't remember what it was, 10 cents or something, or 15 cents for a picture, you could take 1 or 2 pictures. But if you took your other camera out and like my iPhone to take a couple more, they immediately give me more money, basically. And they are pretty aggressive about it. But they are, especially with other tribes, and they're known to be, and they get into a lot of conflicts. There's a mother with her little baby. And here's one that did not, I don't know why she didn't put the lip plate in, but you can see the ears that have been stretched. I thought this woman was just gorgeous. Okay, before I go on to the next one, I want to mention that the conflict among tribes is historic, and it's also very much a problem with the government. So the government is an ethnic federalist government, which means that all these different areas of Ethiopia are autonomous, basically, semi-autonomous. And they did these areas according to ethnic tribes. And it really increases the conflict and competition among the tribes. So they will fight over land, especially possession of the land, which includes grazing land, over water resources, over access to state resources, jobs, investments, funds, over language policy and education. So it's really encouraged, in a sense, by the government and the type of government that they have. And there's been quite a bit of unrest several years ago. Actually, when I went in 2018, there was some unrest, and I was told, oh, some people said, oh, you can't go, but it wasn't where I was going anyway. But there have been kind of uprisings among the tribes. The current one that you may have read about is the Tigray region, which is up north. And the problem was there's a new head of government now that just took over a couple of years ago, but they had communists that took over from Haile Selassie for 30 years, and they were absolutely horrendous. They jailed journalists, and it was a very oppressive government. And they finally got thrown out, and the government that took over since I think 91 was basically run by the Tigray region up north, and they consider themselves better than the others. So they had all this power, and the other tribes were very resentful of that. So the current head is the first time that the Tigrays did not get the head of government, did not get control of the government. And then they insisted on their own election, and the government has now, as you probably know, entered the Tigray region, and are it's a terrible situation, really a civil war. My guide from down south, who's one of these tribes, I've been texting him, and he was positive about it, that you can't let the Tigray people go. I think there's a lot of resentment against the Tigrays for having run the country the way they did for so long. So here's another tribe called the Daasanach. This is a really poor tribe. This is actually across the river. They're across the river. So we were about to go across the river in these dugout boats. As you can see, this is how they travel the river. And they're one of the poorest. They're on a semi-arid land, one of the worst land, and one of the poorest tribes. So look at these huts. Just pretty awful. And I guess especially when there's drought, they are just, they live very, very precariously. The women make the houses while the men are out herding cattle and goats. And so here she is doing the heavy work again. This is what the hut looked like with an animal skin and the rest. And here they're standing around, and you can see one woman is fixing the other one's hair. And again, hair is this big deal in all of these tribes. It's very important. Here's a little boy outside his hut. There's a mother with her 2 kids. And here's 3 of the young men. They don't look, the one on the right, they sure don't look too friendly, are they? You know, in most places of the world, I've found that indigenous tend not to be very friendly. And I think you really have to spend some time there. And of course, with the kind of travel we do, we don't tend to have that kind of time to get to know them and be friendly. So when we come in and we're just walking around and taking pictures, they're likely not to be so happy, except that we pay them. This little girl on the right, she was so darling. And the first time that I went, I visited both times, I visited this tribe. And the first time we went across, and there was almost nobody there, just a bunch of kids, young kids. And the second time, the whole tribe was there, luckily. And so we got to see the whole tribe. But this little girl here, this young woman on the right, was from the first one. She was so darling and friendly. And so we just walked around and took pictures of, this was from the first time, mother and child. I like the feather on her chin. And so when I left, they said it would be like one cent, which is like what that one for each person that you took a picture of. But I wasn't about to do that. But I said, I'll tell you what, I will have a group picture of all the kids and I'll give them each one. So I did. And then they all held up what I gave them, the money I gave them. They were all super happy. It was really cute. So here they are doing a dance. The second time I came, when the whole tribe was there, the women did this dance, and it was really fun to see it. It was really cool. And I have a little video of the dance. And when they go whoop, whoop, they keep doing that all the way. So my guide said that that is supposed to be the sound of a woman when she has sex for the first time. That's what that's supposed to be. So let's see, where is my, here we go. So this is just along the side of the road. So in these tribes, actually, women are allowed to have sex before marriage. And in fact, in the Mursi Tribe, they want them to be experienced, and it makes the woman more desirable, that she's experienced and that other men want her. And that's true apparently in the Hamar Tribe too. And in the cattle leaping ceremony, there's a lot of flirting, etc., that goes on. However, in the Hamar Tribe, the parents have all of the power about when a young man gets married and to whom. So one more just quick thing. This is another tribe down the way from where I was with the Hammers along the river here. And I'll just show you these again with the body painting. This is the Karo tribe. And I did stay overnight here, but this was not very successful. You know, when you go on a trip like this, some things are just, you just have to go with the flow, I guess. So they went there and they didn't realize that when we got there in the afternoon after a long bumpy ride on horrible roads, that there was almost nobody there. And it was about 100 degrees. It was absolutely horrible. And so I just climbed into the air-conditioned car that we had, the Jeep, and I slept. It was just nothing to do, and it was horribly hot and waiting for people to come back at the end of the day. And then I stayed in this compound with these women, and this did not go like the other one did. They just sat there and looked at me, and they didn't chat. I didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to say, and we never got a conversation going. So I ended up, after that was finished, I went over to the schoolhouse and talked to the school teachers there. That was pretty cool. So this is the sun going down in that village with the goats. And that's me taking a picture of these women. Aha, okay, looks like I'm done here. Okay. So you're all muted. If you want to unmute and ask some questions.
I think also, Laurie, there's some in the chat. If you don't mind, I'll pose some to you quick.
Yeah.
So it says, are the cattle branded to identify their ownership at all?
I have no idea. I always get asked questions that I have no idea. They do raid them, so I think they just grab them and keep them.
I suspect not branding, because that's why the raids would be successful. How many languages do they speak? You mentioned that they each speak their own languages. How many do you think there are in the region?
I think I read something like 100, like an amazing number. And there's a lot of a whole bunch of tribes. I mean, there's some major ones and I think probably minor ones. And when I even read about this, I read more of different kinds of tribes that I never even heard of. And some are more allies of each other and some are kind of historic enemies of each other.
Can they communicate with each other? Is there enough of a commonality that they can understand each other?
I think so. The Daasanach, by the way, tribe is actually not a genetic tribe. Interestingly, it's a bunch of exiles from other tribes that have gotten together and they will take anybody in that wants to come in. So it's a big mix of people, which is really, really interesting. And I don't know why the exiles would come. By the way, there was a tribe, the first time I went, there was a tribe that told me that when they have a disagreement among people, like somebody accuses somebody else of having stolen something from his hut. So if there are no witnesses and they can't figure out who is to blame, they say, okay, well, just go home. And if something bad happens to one of them, we will know that was the person that was guilty. And so if somebody gets sick or has an accident or something after that from one of the families, then that's the one that's considered guilty and they are driven out of their tribe, they and their family, and they go to the next tribe and they still have their land. I guess they can come back and cultivate the land that they have with the initial tribe, but they have to live with another tribe. I was just like, kind of shocked that they would have that kind of superstition going on in terms of how they have their legal settlements. But
Yeah, interesting. So the next question is, are there fewer men in Ethiopia? And or I think it springs from the idea that men can take multiple wives. So are there fewer men that they need more than one wife, or is it simply a cultural tradition?
I don't know the answer to that, actually. I'm
Or
sorry.
numerous?
I could give you an answer, but I would be making it up.
That's okay. Do you have any idea what the life expectancy is for people in this part of the continent?
Oh, I don't. That's a good question. I'm sure I could find out, but I can't imagine it's terribly high.
Okay.
You know, they don't have good education. They don't have good health care services. They do have a capital of the region, Jinka, that has a hospital. I saw it. And by the way, there are USAID signs up that, you know, they get a lot of help from nonprofits, I think. But they've also had famines that were because of government problems. It was political. It was not. I mean, they do have droughts. And by the way, one of the things they do when they have droughts is they actually drink the blood of their cattle. Just enough that the cattle can still live because they really need their cattle, but sometimes it helps them get through.
Sounds gross, but it would help you survive. The question about the fellow who jumped over the cows, how old was he? At what age do they do that?
Yeah, you know, he looks so young, doesn't he? I mean, he really looked young. And I don't think I ever asked how old he was. The one that I went to the next time seemed a lot older. It did say that men tend to get married in their 30s, early 30s probably. So this kid did not look like that, but maybe he was. I don't know, or maybe his parents just let him.
Okay.
I don't know.
What impact do you think tourism will have on this ancient culture?
Well, they say it's interrupting it some, that they're getting more used to money from tourists and that this might not be a good thing. But I think that more impact is from government policies and taking their land, or I think that's why they've also had the uprisings and stuff, that they're not being paid attention to. They're not being invested in very much. The roads actually were improved because of by the government because of tourism, to get the tourists down there, and people are just fascinated with this. So, yeah.
Okay. You had mentioned the Orthodox Ethiopians. How do these tribal groups perceive the Orthodox Ethiopians? Do they interact at all?
No, not really. They do have some Christian missionaries that have come down there, and so there's some Christianity down there. But they're also very proud of their own religion. It's considered animism. So they do believe in the God, a major God up in the sky, but also other smaller gods, and that they can pray and to these gods for rain, etc. And they believe in all of that. So they have not been very Christianized. It doesn't sound like at all.
Okay.
Some of the young people, by the way, do go to the towns. They do learn English or whatever. That's the language for Ethiopia is Amharic. Actually, it's not English, but of course, for everywhere in the world, for tourism, you got to know some English. But a lot of the young people, they don't want to, you know, some of them don't want to stay there, obviously. Some of them are really proud of their culture and want to, but some of them don't want to because it's a really kind of a tough life.
Okay. What other religions are present? Sunni Muslim, or is there any Islam? Are they mostly Orthodox Ethiopians? I thought there were Jewish Ethiopians. Are there
The
Muslims?
Jewish Ethiopians have all gone to Israel.
Okay.
And they were really poor and not well treated anyway in Ethiopia. I mean, I don't know that there was anti-Semitism. They were just a bad, poor life. I don't know, but they've all been taken to pretty much to Israel. The whole north is basically Ethiopian Orthodox, and if you ever go to Ethiopia, they have these wonderful religious ceremonies holidays. And I went for one, it's called Timket, which is around January 17th. And it's actually Epiphany, what we call Epiphany. And oh my gosh, I have great pictures of that. If you ever want to see some religious things around the world, that I have that, and I have some stuff from India. But anyway, that one, everybody all over northern Ethiopia comes out. It's almost like two countries, totally. So everybody comes out, they're dancing on the streets, and these long rows of robed priests, and there's dancing, and it's just amazing. And then they all jump in the river and have a kind of a baptism. So they actually take out a copy of the Ark, what am I thinking? What's the word?
Ark of the Covenant.
Thank you very much. Ark of the Covenant. And they parade it around that day. That's what that is for. And then they go back. Every single church all over northern Ethiopia has a copy of the Ark of the Covenant. So that's their big thing. Christmas is always also a big deal. It is not on Christmas Day. It is on January 7th, I believe. And that's a big deal all over Ethiopia. So if you ever come, it's just and it's different. It's celebrated in the big cities. It's celebrated, but in the tiny towns and rural areas, it's celebrated. It's wonderful. However, about a third of Ethiopia, I believe, is Muslim. And they are in a particular area of Ethiopia that I have not been to yet. It's in the east. And it's a whole area with a city, a town, and that whole area is Muslim. And I think they live just fine side by side. They don't have big problems. The problems in Africa tend not to be so much religious, they tend to be ethnic.
And tribal. So do you arrange your own travel, or do you use a commercial travel company to go to these places?
Well, it's sort of one and the same. You could travel in northern Ethiopia by yourself, but it would be, I don't know, it'd be a little hard. In the south, you actually can't. They insist that you have local guides and pay for being down there. I found a guy that ran a travel company. There's a million of them, and you do have to be careful because some of them don't go very well. So you want to make sure you get one that is well recommended by people that have gone with them. And so both times I went with the person that arranged the whole thing and got me the guides and places to stay and all of that. And that worked out really well. The second time I went, and they gave me a local guide that was part of grew up in the tribes, not those particular tribes, but and he was excellent and gave me so much information about the tribes and how they lived and everything. And so that was really great. Sometimes you go there, when you first go there, you're so taken with the scene that I didn't even know what to ask. I didn't really think about it ahead of time, which I should have, or researched ahead of time to ask questions, but you're just so overwhelmed by the scene. You're like, it's just kind of so amazing. Who's ever seen this before? I certainly hadn't. Maybe you guys have, but I certainly hadn't. And when I got back, I had more questions. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to go back the second time to kind of get a better sense of how they lived. I don't know that I really did. I stayed overnight, one night in each of the two tribes. I don't know that I really got such a better, but the best was probably because of the one night with the Hamar tribe was just wonderful. Just sitting outside. The mother and father came out after they ate and we ate, and we just sat around, and my guide interpreted for me, translated for me, and just listen to them talk about their lives and what was important to them. And it was really wonderful.
Nice. I will throw out Tavi's comment. I was having the same thought when you were mentioning that that Christmas is in January. That's the old calendar for the Orthodox Church. So that's why that falls on in January on the 7th instead of on December 25. The last question we've got time for, we're going to butt up just a little bit over time. You mentioned that they charge for photos. Was there an admission charge to visit the villages? And is there any worry that these villages will become tourist attractions?
The first time, I think every picture that I took, I had to pay for. But as I say, not very much. Actually, I was with another couple that had never done this either. And they were very turned off and started to say, well, this is wrong and I'm not going to pay. And I'm like, really? I'm not going to come all this way. And if it ends up costing me, you know, a couple of dollars in a village, I'm not going to come back with no pictures. So so anyway, that was how it was. But the second time, some of the villages now are getting together to charge an admission fee, and then you can take all the pictures you want. So, you know, you give them $5 or $10 or whatever, and then you hang around for several hours. It's like, that was well worth it. And they said, I hope the guide said, this works so much better, and I hope that everybody starts doing that. The cattle leaping ceremony, whoa, they have really learned. So the first time, I'm not remembering now the name of the Ethiopian money, but anyway, it was 300 of whatever it was. But that was like all day. I mean, so, and I think it was about $15 worth is what it was. The second time it was 600. So they knew what they were doing. However, the rate, you can tell I'm old. I'm losing. Exchange rate, thank you. The exchange rate had changed. And so 600 was not double anymore for me. So it was more like $20 or $25. That was the only time it was anything like that, you know, most of the time it was $5 to go into a village or something like that. If you were, and they still have some, like the Mursi was still per person. So they might end up getting, you know, getting more organized with it, more and more of them as they get used to this and everything. But I don't know what the cattle leaping ceremony will be next time. It'll probably be $50. I don't know. But anyway, it was still, what are you going to do? You spent all that money to get there and all that time, and how many times are you going to go? You're going to pay it. And that's the thing, is they know people are going to do that, right? So you can't blame them too much, right?
A couple of comments. Helen and I spent time in Ethiopia a couple of years ago, spent a month in Djibouti in Ethiopia. Our experience was that in most of the villages we went to, one of the head persons of the village sort of handled the financial aspects. So our experience was that this wasn't true everywhere, but the issue of paying one of the headmen for the entire village works. And then in terms of Islam, we spent some time in the Islamic area of Ethiopia, and it's interesting. Harar is one of the major cities in Islam. It's one of the third or fourth holiest city in Islam. And it's very significant in Islamic history because early in Islamic history, when Muhammad with his followers were still in Mecca and they were being persecuted before they went to Medina, and they were basically a pacifist group, he sent much of his followers to Ethiopia, and they stayed in Harar and were protected there, and that has evolved into a significant Islamic city. It is mixed Christian and Islam, but there's definitely an Islamic area, and we were very welcome. In fact, we were walking down streets, there was a wedding, and people came out and invited us into the wedding, and we were dancing with them. They had a celebration, and we were given rice and camel stew, which was actually pretty good. But I would suggest looking at Eastern Ethiopia. I think you would also find it interesting. It's a very different area. There also, Helen likes birds, so there's some good areas for birding and for wildlife. So there's a whole mixture of things that is not on the usual tourist track, from going to North Ethiopia with the churches and then going south with the tribes. It is a different area, and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of different nature areas. In the north, there's a mountain area. Some people go and they trek there for 5 days. Yeah. Or something, and they can do that, and there's certain animals there that you can't find elsewhere. And then there's another one in where you probably went, in the little more south and east, closer to Harar. That's another one. I didn't go to that one, but I would like to. And I will tell you, one of the reasons I went back is I found the Ethiopians in general, aside, not, as I say, not so much the tribes, but but the Ethiopians, other than that, are so friendly and warm. And I had the same experience even in the capital. I was just walking along and I heard some noise and I said, what's this? And I went in and it was turned out to be an engagement party. And they came over to me and said, come on in. And here we're eating, come eat with us and dance with us. And they didn't want me to leave. And I mean, and they put their arms around me. I mean, they are very warm people. You know, people, I think people, when you hear Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, one of the questions I got before I went the first time by a lot of people is it safe? Is it safe? Are you going to be safe? We just assume that it's very unsafe. And I think it's not at all. And whenever I go anywhere, I ask, people will tell you. And we went to one place as we were going south and as we were driving along, I saw a whole bunch of young people, and around the corner was where my place was that we were going to stay overnight. And so I asked my guide, like, what was that over that we passed? And he said, oh, it's a university. And I said, oh, well, it was like 3 p.m. We had nothing else to do that day. I said, well, can I, is it okay if I just walk over there by myself? He said, yeah, it is, but maybe be back before dark. So I think it would have been fine actually after dark, but I am not about to try. So I walked over there and it was interesting. I tried to talk, there were a bunch of girls coming out and I tried to talk to them and they're very shy and they didn't talk. And then a bunch of guys came out and I started to talk to them and I was immediately surrounded by more and more men that wanted to talk to me, young men. They were students. It was very interesting. The former government built a whole bunch of like 13 universities all over Ethiopia. And all of these guys said they were the same, they were the first people in their families to go to university. However, there are no jobs for them after they leave. I mean, they thought maybe they'd have to start their own business, they were getting engineering or something. And this is true in a lot of places that you could get educated and you can't necessarily get any kind of decent job afterward. But anyway, I believe it was free university for all these guys. But it was so interesting how these guys were so comfortable talking to me and how the women were so shy and wouldn't talk to me,
Did you see evidence of the Chinese? Because when we were there was a big Chinese presence. They're building a railroad from Djibouti to Addis Ababa. In Addis and in Harar, there were a number of Chinese engineering firms. So in terms of globalization, the Chinese are in Africa in a big way, and Ethiopia is a great example, and Djibouti are great examples of that.
Yeah, they're all over investing, but there's a big controversy about how good this is for these countries because it's not for nothing that they're building this stuff. And but of course, the United States sees China as a big competitor, and they're pretty worried about the increasing influence that China has. But they're doing it by investing in these countries, definitely. Yeah.
So one last quick question: what happens if the young man falls off the couch?
I think they said he basically has to. I think he gets back on, and they make him do it again. And I think he pretty much has to, after going through all that everybody's going through, they want him to succeed. So I don't think that they don't succeed eventually.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, we have reached our time limit, but we could go on talking for the rest of the day, I think. Thank you so much, Dr. Bergner. This was really a fascinating program. You are a terrific photographer.
Thank you. It's really a lot of fun. It was really, thank you for asking me. It was lots of fun.
Yeah, and on behalf of the Peoria World Affairs Council, have a wonderful weekend. Everybody join us next week for our board meeting on Thursday and Myanmar on Friday at 11. So sign up. If you're not a member, become a member, and be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next week.